Good morning. I call to order the Planning Commission meeting of March 27, 2024 at 9 a.m. We are meeting in the San Mateo County Board Chambers as well as remotely via Zoom. Please rise and join me for the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Madam Clerk, please proceed with the roll call.
Commissioner Gupta,
Here.
Commissioner Hansen,
Here.
Commissioner Serrano Juan,
Here.
Commissioner Ramirez,
Here.
Chair Ketchum.
Here.
Thank you, Chair. You have a quorum and staff is represented by Monowitz, Fox. Thank you.
We will now open public comment for items on the consent agenda or items not on the regular agenda. Madam Clerk, please proceed.
Thank you, Madam Chair. There is nobody in chambers and there is nobody in Zoom wishing to speak on items not on the agenda. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll now close public comment for items not on the regular agenda. Do we have a motion to approve the consent agenda with the minutes for March 13, 2024?
I motion to approve the minutes. Second.
That was a motion by Serrano Juan and a second by Commissioner Hansen. Commissioner Gupta,
Yes.
Commissioner Hansen,
Aye.
Commissioner Serrano Juan.
Aye.
Commissioner Ramirez,
Abstain.
Chair Ketchum.
Yes.
Thank you, Chair. Motion carries.
Thank you. We will now move on to the regular agenda. Madam Clerk, please introduce item 2.
Owner, John Dahman. Applicant, Doug Kowalski. File number PLN 2023-00051. Location 601 Viewdemar Avenue, Moss Beach. APN 037-155-010, and your project planner is Sam Becker.
Morning, commissioners. Good morning, members of the public participating virtually. My name is Sam Becker. I'm a planner with the County of San Mateo, and I'm representing this project. As Angela already stated, the project case number is PLN 2023-00051, and this is located at 601 Viewdemar Avenue. So first, I just wanted to give a little project description for you all. The project here is consideration of a design review permit, non-conforming use permit. And this is for the construction of a 571 square foot addition, a new 331 square foot deck, 41 square foot entry porch, and this is an existing 1,307 foot single family residence, and is on a 7,540 square foot corner parcel. The reason a non-conforming use permit is needed is due to the existing non-conforming structure. Section 6135.5B of the zoning regs state that for a major repair, remodel, or upgrade to an existing non-conforming structure, if there's a violation of the zoning standard by more than 50%, the entire structure needs to come into conformity. And there's an existing non-conformity by more than 50% that I'll get into when we look at the site plans. And additionally, the project is requesting an exception to the covered off-street parking requirements. And I'll get into that a little bit more into detail when we look at the plans. Wonderful. So this is just on the left here, the image is just an outline of the subject property using Google aerial view. Able to see again that it is a corner lot. As I said before, it's over the minimum required for S17 district. It's 7,500 and some change. The use permit is again for the major repair remodel. The required where the non-conformity violates the zoning standard by more than 50%. The existing residence currently has a 4 feet 2 3/4 inch rear yard setback, which is the rear yard is, it's pretty apparent by the photo, but the structure is backed up to that rear yard and it's facing the neighboring property. The front of the property is facing that corner of Lancaster and Viewdemar. Additionally, off-street parking requirement, there's an exception that's requested here. The project is required to provide one covered off-street parking space. They're proposing one uncovered off-street parking space, and that's going to be in the existing driveway, which is along Unimer Avenue. The existing parking, well, the previous parking on site was in the garage, and it was converted legally to a JDU, and the parking wasn't required to be replaced per state law. So they're proposing to use that existing driveway to satisfy parking requirements. Right here is a screenshot from the plans that were attached. This is the site plan, just to give us a little bit more context of the addition and the setbacks that were discussed. Again, corner lot, 10-foot setbacks are required for the side yards. Those are outlined with a dash line on the plans there. 20 feet front and rear setbacks. I outlined the addition in red for the first story addition. The blue outline there is the new 331 square foot deck. And then a little bit hard to tell there in the green, just to the right of the addition, but that's the new entryway porch. There's no trees that are proposed for removal as part of this project. There's minimal grading, so no other permits required there. I'm going to show the next slide and we'll talk a little bit more about that rear yard setback. I'll show it a little bit more zoomed in. Great. So again, just going back to the original site plan here, and then we're focusing on that rear yard. 4 feet, 2 3/4 inch is the existing and proposed rear yard setback. 20 feet is what is required. This clearly violates the zoning standards by more than 50%, which is triggering that non-conforming use permit, since this is a major addition. I just want to note that the project is not violating any of the other zoning standards for development in S17 outside of this rear yard setback, which is again existing and proposed. There's no proposed changes to this rear setback. All of the work is in the front of the yard facing that corner point of the parcel. Here's the existing floor plan that I wanted to show you all, again, coming from the plans provided by the applicant. As you can see, there's the former garage has been converted to JDU space. Here, that's where the required covered parking was being provided previously. It was a 1-bedroom house before this proposal. And that's right there, the 1-bedroom. And then now I wanted to just juxtapose this existing floor plan with the proposed floor plan, so we have a little bit of idea of what that's going to look like. And so again, I outlined the addition for floor. It's all coming towards floor area, but the addition of the single family residence here outlined in red, the deck here again in blue, and then the entryway porch here in green. And I apologize, this slide should just read proposed. Parking. So as I noted before, the parking on site was already converted and was not required to be replaced per state law for ADU conversions of garages. So they currently have 0 covered spaces on the property. Because the proposal is going from a 1-bedroom home to a 2-bedroom home, the county is asking for 1 covered off-street parking space. The applicant is proposing to have an uncovered off-street parking space in this spot right here. It's already been used for that. I looked at some Google images over time and talked to the applicant, and they've shared that driveway spot has been used previously. And I didn't receive any comments during the noticing for design review or this about parking situation. But again, yeah, just the county is just requesting for 1 covered space, and this is what they're proposing based on their project, is just the 1 uncovered space. And I just want to note again, additionally, I reviewed this with the Department of Public Works. They were referred as one of the agencies, and they had no comments on the parking or influencing right of way. They had no comments on that. I hope this is readable for you on this screen over here so you can see the colors a little bit better, but this was the color and materials board that was presented by the applicant when we went to the COSI design review meeting on January 11th, 2024. The COSI design review committee, they reviewed and they recommended for approval. They provided some conditions after looking at the plans, the demonstration of scale and the color and materials board, and we're asking for black railings on this front porch, the 331 square foot porch that was proposed here in the front. They're asking for the wood deck that was mentioned in this colors of material board to be specifically redwood deck surface. And lastly, on this exterior lighting, item number 9 here on the color materials board, they were asking to ensure that it was dark sky compliant lighting. I wanted to also show the demonstration of scale that was presented to the CDRC. This is the view of the home looking at the front, and this would be if you were standing at the corner of Lancaster and Newtomer, and this is the elevation facing that corner. As you can see, there's no real impact on the house or the houses to the side since it's on a corner lot. So the one house that the CDRC was concerned about when it came to demonstration of scale was the home in the rear. They put an outline of that adjacent 2-story home there. I would note that the project as proposed, they're offering to do all the addition in the front of the property, so which is away from that adjacent 2-story home, which is on the side of the existing rear nonconformity. It's slightly lower, as you can see from that 2-story home. So the CDRC reviewed and didn't have any further comments on visual impacts or any development impacting this line of sight from that 2nd-story house adjacent. I wanted to show here the remaining elevations. We looked at the front elevation already for the property. The south and the north at the top of this slide are showing the sides. So south elevation here facing Newtomer. This is the JDU or the garage converted JDU. On the north side, this is a portion of the addition. Again, this is the proposed plan and the proposed elevations. And then the rear, where their existing nonconformity is, and facing that adjacent home to the rear. There no further changes on that side, but I do note the roof difference here that was reviewed by the CDRC. But again, no addition coming to that side. Great. This table, I also included it into the staff report. I know it can be quite a bit of information, but I hope the color coding on the last column to the right is helpful for you all to see that the proposal does conform with zoning regulations outside of the rear yard setback that is remaining, existing at the 4 feet, 2 3/4 inch, proposed at the same distance. The proposed addition meets height requirements. They are significantly below the 53% floor area requirement, significantly below the lot coverage ratio requirement as well for S17 parcels. And then lastly, the minimum parking spaces, which has been discussed, that 1 covered off-street parking spot is required, and the applicant is proposing 1 uncovered off-street parking spot. Through the staff report and through review, we were able to find that findings could be made for general plan, LCP, zoning regulations, design review regulations after speaking to the CDRC. Additionally, the findings can be made for the non-conforming use permit. There was no visual impacts. There was no impacts to any environmentally sensitive areas. And there was no significant adverse impact to coastal resources, and it was determined this addition is not detrimental to welfare or injurious to property or improvements to the overall neighborhood. Last, just want to touch on CEQA review, environmental review, finding that the project is applicable to 15301. The addition is slightly over 50%, so the normal 15301 class E1 that you see when it comes to additions wasn't able to be used. So we were looking at if it would result in an increase of 10,000 square feet, which it's much below that. I think it's in total an additional 783 square feet. The project is meeting the zoning and the general plan designation for the area, single family residential, low density. And the project's not an environmentally sensitive area. There's been no comments from any of the referred agencies, fire included, on any sensitivities there. And it's an already developed parcel outside of the portion getting closer to the edge of that corner lot at Unimer and Lancaster. Within an existing residential neighborhood and would not disturb any previously undisturbed environmentally sensitive areas. Overall, based on this, staff is recommending that the commission approve the design review and non-conforming use permit. And this is again for file number PLN 2023-00051. And subject to the attached findings that are in attachment A of the staff report. And right here, I just have the info on the project up again on the screen. Thank you for your time, and I'll take any questions. And did lastly want to note that the applicant, Mr. Gawowski, should be available virtually as well if there are any questions specifically for him, as he's the architect of the project. Thank you.
Does the applicant plan to make a presentation?
They do not plan to make a presentation, but
Okay,
they are
they're
here to
available.
answer any
Okay.
questions that you might have specifically for them.
Thank you, Mr. Becker. Do Commissioners have questions for staff? Or the applicant?
I do.
Okay.
Thank you. Very nice presentation and the staff report is very well done.
Thank you.
Just more questions in terms of parking.
Mhm.
On the driveway, is there space for another parking?
Yeah, so
Like-
there's enough space for a 9x19, definitely. I didn't measure for 2 spaces, although only 1 is being required here. I think there would be space for another 9x19 space, but it may require some improvements to the property, like additional pavement and things that Department of Public Works would need to comment on for proper driveway apron, et cetera. But for the 1 space that we're asking for, the 9x19 parking standard is met by that existing space.
Thank you for that. And so there's some remodeling also being done
Correct.
to the,
Correct.
okay. Okay. So these are two. Another one, I was looking at the chronology
Yes.
here. And it says that this junior ADU
Yes.
permit was issued in January of 23.
Yes.
Then what happened in February of 24?
Part of that was I was the project planner for the JDU conversion. And I was gone from the county, and I think the permit may have fallen between the cracks in the building department, but I was able to then record the JDU deed restriction. There was some back and forth on recording it correctly. The applicants attempted to do that during 2023 and it wasn't done correctly. The recorder's office sent it back to us. And then I took it to the recorder's office and made sure it was recorded correctly, the JDU deed restriction. So that was the last inspection that was closing out that building case as final. So it had been pending there for a little bit.
Okay, okay. So was there some additional work that had to be done?
It was
Legalize it?
It was legalizing it, had been converted without the benefit of permit prior to this ownership. They brought it to the building department to legalize it. The only thing that was remaining in that gap there, that time period, was just recording and signing the JDU deed restriction. So there wasn't a review of any additional scope of work or anything like that. It was just a recording document on the back end of the process to close out planning inspection.
Okay, okay. So there's no work to be done in that respect?
Correct. The JDU garage as shown on these plans is final. There's no additional work related to that. That's why we're calling it existing on this plan set.
Okay. Okay. And my last question is, I noticed that that on the deck, there's a metal rail.
Hmm.
Like everything else is wood and more natural. I was just curious. Why was it chosen as a metal rail? Is that normal, like in that area?
I'm not
That's
too-
what is done?
I'm not too sure why it was proposed that way. I would defer to the architect for the project to speak to that. I believe the only comment we received from the CDRC on that specific feature was just to have a certain color. But if Mr. Gawaski has anything extra to add on why that was chosen, I'd be glad to let him speak about that.
Okay, yeah, I would like to know that. Sure. That's all I have. So,
Thank you, Commissioner.
So this uncovered space that they're asking to be allowed, is that being used right now as an uncovered space already?
Correct. And
Okay.
it's, I historically, just speaking from looking at Google Images over the past 10 or so years, it looks like that spot has been used as well, in that space. It doesn't look like there's much of an impact for introducing. It's not like a new introduction of using this uncovered space. It looks like it's been used like that previously. But I know this is a new ownership group from just a few years ago, so to how the garage was used previously, I'm not sure, but it was converted to JDU previously and then permitted just earlier in 2023.
But you also mentioned that in that area, there seems to be enough space maybe to add another parking space uncovered.
I think the only possible space, you couldn't do it on either of the sides, like where the existing garage is. I'll pull up the site plan, we can look at that. I think the only. There we go. This is a little bit of a downsloped area in the open portion of the parcel. I guess that could be a proposed area. We didn't really investigate that with planning department public works. We were more so just their review was really ensuring that this space was proper, the existing asphalt. It's possible, I guess, that an off-street covered space could go elsewhere. I think that's just not desired by the applicant for. There may be some tree removals. There's a few trees kind of along the setback area that may be removed. So I think it was going to expand the scope of work a little bit for maybe some more grading, some more tree removal. So they were just asking to use what's been used as a parking space and just allowing it to be uncovered as the exception part of it.
Yeah, I get it. My only concern is that we're not really adding any more parking
Understood.
in this particular lot. Normally we've always said, you know, if the lot is too tight, too small, and there's nowhere to be more space to add another parking space, then we normally say, okay, well let's let it go. But it seems like in this area there is enough. I mean, the lot is big enough where more parking could be added.
And I would speak to the parking replacement from the garage, and part of that is outside of our purview because of state law
Yeah.
with ADUs. So that existing parking that I believe was a 2-car garage wasn't required to be replaced from the state. So we're really just looking at one space because of the 1-bedroom to 2-bedroom the addition going from 1 bed to 2 bed. Yeah, I would say there may be sensitivity when it comes to this a little bit. You see the contours right here. It's a little bit further sloped as you get closer and closer to that corner.
Yeah.
So this is the only undisturbed area of the parcel. I think also the layout of this structure, if it was existing conforming and not existing non-conforming, this would be pushed about 16 feet, 15 feet 5 inches this way. So there may be a little bit less space then in this area.
Yeah, but I'm just thinking,
Yeah.
right here where you have the yellow marked.
Correct.
If in this area, you can just widen the driveway, so there'd be a double wide.
Excuse me,
And then remove that, the gate or whatever that is, or is this part of the structure right here?
This to the left.
This here?
This is it's a gate and an entryway to an existing porch walkway, and then they're proposing to do new planting and then the new entryway porch right there. To the right,
But that's
Mhm.
outside exposed. It's not part of the structure
Correct.
of the building.
correct, yeah, it's
Yeah.
not covered, there's no like waterproof covering on this little walkway here. It's just a walkway up to the front of the house and the front entry.
Okay, yeah, because to me, that would be better utilized if there was converted into another parking space. That's my take, so
Mhm.
I'll let the rest of the commissioners.
Excuse
there-
me, can I speak to the driveway
They
situation?
want to add to this. Thanks. Commissioner.
While you have that slide up,
Mhm.
so basically most of this yellow outlined area is actually in the right of way
Correct.
and always has been.
Correct, and always has been, and this space has been used like this, Department of Public Works didn't have any comment on. Because there's no further improvements proposed, they were just trying to utilize the driveway as existing. But Department of Public Works didn't have any further comments on encroachment permits or anything like that, because there was no proposed work in that space. But we talked about it.
Excuse me.
Any more?
Yes.
I guess, never mind. I thought this was within the area of the setback of the lot.
Yeah,
But if it's out in the public right of way, then obviously we couldn't use it like that.
yeah, this first dash line here that I'm
Yeah.
outlining, that's the setback line that goes around the property here.
Mm,
And the second dash line here that has the coordinates on it and the length and the width is the boundary line for the parcel. So that the area that you were mentioning was outside of the set, it's within the setback.
Yeah,
That gate, I think it says gate trellis, I can't read that from here. Gate and trellis, okay.
Yeah, so it'd be correct to say the only place they could legally build a parking spot is in front of the house.
In front of the house is the most open area here.
Right.
It is
Yeah.
just slightly downslope. The further you go towards that corner, as you can see from the contours.
so then getting back to this a little bit. So in reality, they don't have the uncovered parking space is going to be in the public right away, the one parking space that they're asking for, because this is the yellow area.
A portion of this, yes. I think about half of the length of it fits right here, between garage, between asphalt driveway. I was just looking on Google Maps over time, street views and seeing if a car had been there, and there has been a car in this space previously. Didn't seem to have any impact issues on access along Bunimer. There was other cars in driveways similar. I'm not sure if they were also impacting right away at all. I haven't looked at plans for neighboring properties at all. But yeah, Department of Public Works didn't have any comment on this. We discussed this as just utilizing what was already existing when it came to parking, was the conversation with the applicant and with reviewing agencies.
With permission of the chair, give you my personal opinion of being out there. I was out there to look at the property. Okay, the street itself is narrow, but the right of way for the street is wider. You know, turning around in the street wasn't difficult, wasn't easy. It was just there, just a typical narrow street. This was about 10 to 11 o'clock in the morning. Parking wasn't an issue on this street per se as on that day at that time. I thought about the parking when I was out there, you know, looking at this and going out there. The only place you could put it is right in front of the new porch and front windows.
Yeah, but that would be inside their property.
Right,
And
but you could not put it, well, they could park in the public right of way.
I personally have an issue with too many, as you go drive around, too many people that have encroached into the public right away, you know, all over the place.
Yeah.
And I have,
Yeah, and they
I have a
couldn't,
problem with
yeah,
that.
they could not park on the Lancaster Street.
Yeah.
That hill's just too steep at that point.
Okay. All right, well, thanks.
This is this is pretty much the story throughout the mid-coast.
And pardon me, through the chair, the applicant does have their hand raised. I think they're ready to address some of the questions.
Let them please.
Yes, thank you.
Mr. Kowalski, go ahead.
Yes, thank you. So I realize the parking is in the public right of way. If you look right above that parking spot, that one square is the garage, which appeared to be added to this cottage at some point in the 70s. So that garage itself is 20 by 20. So in front of that, there is a paved driveway, which if you look at the comparison, it's not dimension, but if you look at the comparison of the garage to the driveway, there's probably easily 4 to 5 parking spots between the curb of the street and the face of that previous garage, which is 20 feet wide across the face. So there is plenty of parking in that driveway, which is asphalt. And also there's parking along the shoulder as well. So parking is not a concern for the owner of this property. So that is conclusion of my talk on the parking situation.
Any more
Yeah,
questions for the
Yeah,
applicant?
so, but you're talking about parking out in the public right of way? Or within the lot line?
In the public right of way, yes, there's plenty of parking in the public right of way.
Okay.
You can see at the lower level is where the curb is. So the right of way is very wide at this point, where the street is fairly narrow.
Yeah, but in general, I mean, we don't count any parking that is in the public right of way. Your requirement is for parking within your
Right,
line.
right.
Yeah.
Right, yes, I didn't count that. That's why we were asking for the exception to require that one space. In reality, there's plenty of parking in that driveway, but per zoning regulations, they don't count as legal parking spaces.
Thank you.
Any more questions for staff or the applicant?
Just for clarification, so there is one parking space within the parcel. Is that correct?
Within the property line,
Yes.
probably not. I mean, you could probably park parallel to the front of the garage and fit that car within that property line, but that's a maneuver that can't be done. So no.
Okay. So there is not, but unless we park parallel to the garage. Okay,
Right.
thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, correct, Commissioner. 19 feet long would be what's required. I don't have the measurements here exactly, but portion of that length, if you were pulling up into the driveway, would be outside of this property line here. If you imagine just like a rectangle. And this, I know it's not the best representation of the laser there, but yeah, a portion of it would be outside of this property line right here. If you're pulling up, like the applicant said, if you were to put parallel to the garage, it's possible that the garage is 20 by 20, so the 19 length of the parking space would fit. I don't believe this is 9 wide on each side though. So they've been using it from what I've seen, whether that's this current owner or previously, it's been used as proposed, just pulling up into this driveway with the front of the car facing the garage. Didn't seem to be any concerns with impacting right of way or impacting travel along Budemer. But yeah, just from what I've seen from existing street view photos.
But that is inside the setback
A portion.
portions. Okay,
And yeah, so yeah, the exception they're asking for is for the one covered space, one covered being the requirement for this addition.
Is that all? Any more questions? Shall we open public comment. Is there anybody?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I will first call upon members in chambers, followed by speakers on Zoom. For in-person comments, the speaker slips are located in the ante room. On Zoom, please use the raise hand feature or *9 if you are calling by phone. And at this time, we have no public comment for item 2. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll now close public comment for item 2. Does the director have anything you want to add?
Well, I appreciate the discussion on the parking. I think it's significant observation that the one parking space that's to be provided encroaches onto the public right of way. That being the case, though, in looking at the Google Street View and from what I know of the area, I think it's highly unlikely that there's going to be any improvements to View de Mar in the near future. And that the historical use of the area in front of the garage as parking likely meets the needs of the residents. So, you know, I think that there might be an option to provide parking on the property to, on the ocean side of the converted JADU where the trellis is. But I think doing so would really intrude on the quality of the design of the lot and eliminate established landscaping. So I think the fact that the parking required for the residential use at this site does slightly encroach in the right of way, but is far off of the existing paved right of way is probably an insignificant impact. I would recommend, I would maintain the current recommendation to allow the exception because I think forcing the parking onto the property would really diminish the quality of the design and remove some of the landscaping that makes that is part of the character of the area. And that concludes my remarks unless there's questions.
I think that, you know, I was concerned about setting a precedent for something that's not already desirable, but you know, if you pull back and look at this neighborhood, this is what's done. And it's not perfect and we run into problems when we all of a sudden need more room on the street, but this isn't really one of those streets. This did a dead end. So I'm not concerned about that, although, you know, it is of note that so little parking is being required nowadays because of state law and this and that. But any further discussion?
Actually going out there, you know, the street's narrow, but the right of way is huge. You know, the driveway, the paved driveway goes all the way up to the existing street. And so it looks like a long driveway. You know, there's plenty of parking on what's already paved, and it doesn't impact the neighborhood. It only would impact the neighborhood if should they ever want to widen the street to its full legal size. I can't imagine why they would do that. I can't, you know, in my lifetime, I don't see it happening. And if you put it, the only place that they, to me, they could put it, which is in front of the house, we're just going to make a lot of impervious spot in front. It's $1 million view. If you haven't been up there, that view from that house is gorgeous. And not many places on the coastline have a view like that. And seeing it as a parking lot as opposed to something that's desirable. I mean, they're making a house that's going to actually have windows to take advantage of the view and everything else, you know. I see nothing to be gained by doing anything other than legally conforming to everything. I don't see how that benefits anybody else other than the legalities of the situation. I think the existing conditions allow for what they're requesting. And that's my take on it.
Okay, I'm going to differ with you on this one. in the sense that I just don't, I think this would be the slippery slope where we are not requiring them to keep at least one parking like it's required within the property lines. That in the future, someone else can come and say, well, you know, you already allowed it somewhere else. Why couldn't you allow it for me? And one parking off uncovered is the minimum within their public, within their property line. It's what is required. To me, if they had to do adjustments to their landscaping in order to fulfill this requirement, which is a minimum requirement that would that is required. It wouldn't be too much to ask, and I understand that it's probably a beautiful landscaping, but I think we also have the need to fulfill the requirements of what is.
See, I always consider more leeways for corner houses because it's always a challenge to do it working on a corner. But this is even more of a challenge because it's not a square corner, it's a triangle. And the house is built at the base of the triangle. It's really narrow at the front, where they may have the yardage, but they have an odd shape to begin with. And trying to pave everything to get to that little odd shape for what? To make a point? I don't think this is the place to make the point. I make the point on things that are square and
I'm
cookie
gonna say,
cutter and stuff like
I
that.
hear you and I respect your point of view, but in this
I respect your point of view too. I'm just saying, this is not my place to draw
So-
my line.
But we can, do the motion and see where it goes.
Go
I
for
don't have a problem with that. So
I have a question. Oh, go ahead.
No, I think it's the applicant, the owner has done a very good job of keeping a very sizable, good size home, a residence on this property of it's a good size parcel on which they are maintaining that. And I agree with Commissioner Ramirez that they should have one minimal on the parcel parking space. And if we don't do it now, we will never have that on this property. Today, they may have plans to only have a few people on the property, in the homes. But tomorrow, the size may grow and the need for parking may be more. So I agree with what Commissioner Ramirez is saying. And I think we should have, if it requires that a little tweaking to be done to the design, then it should be done. To bring at least minimal one uncovered parking on the parcel. That's my,
If I may,
question.
Chair, yes, please.
About JADU, you had mentioned a deed restriction for the JADU. So help me understand. And this was also just to legalize something that had been done by a previous owner. So you have a garage and I could imagine they made a bedroom out of it, another bedroom, and or whatever. I mean, does this deed restriction say this always has to be a separate, residence, and it can never be just part of the house, or what is it? Because it seemed to me the issue was caused by converting the garage into living space.
Correct.
And yet this JADU thing allows them to do that. So it's not like this occurred now.
well, they could have stayed legal with the JADU if they don't do the addition. If they don't do the addition, there's no more additional parking required. You know, but now that they're doing the addition, it is
I
required.
understand the legalities
Yeah.
of it, but the way it's written up, but I just, were you gonna say something?
Well, I'm not able to answer your question because I don't know what the terms of the deed restriction are, and so I'm wondering if Sam might be able to
Yeah, it's
provide
my
that.
understanding it's for owner occupancy, so saying that they're going to be occupying it. And that it's not like being sold off, the property's not being sold off at the JDU. But I need to pull it up and look at the restriction, the deed recording document again, to give you an exact answer. I apologize, I don't have that on me.
I think that's all right, Sam. I don't know that the deed restriction is all that relevant to the parking issue, other than they you know, whoever's living there has to be a relation to the owner of the property, which I think does minimize the amount of parking demand potentially. What I was gonna ask is if Sam, if you have a slide of the Google Street View that shows the garage.
I don't, I had that in a previous iteration of the slide, but I
Okay.
don't have that currently.
That's okay. I'm looking at it right now, and although you can't see it, I think it really illustrates what the architect was saying, and that is that under the current situation, there really is ample parking for the residential use as existing and as proposed that won't interfere with the paved roadway. So the only impact I see this having would be, number one, if there was a big demand for public access parking on the shoulders of the right of way in this neighborhood. I don't think that's the case, given there's no direct coastal access in near proximity. So I don't think that the residential use of the right of way for parking is adversely impacting coastal access and recreation opportunities. So then the only other scenario where it would have an impact on the public would be in the event that, as we were saying, View to Mar was to be expanded. And in that regard, I would say there's nothing in this action that would preclude the county from moving forward, should it propose it in the future, which I think is highly unlikely, but should improvements to that right of way be undertaken, it's not like we couldn't do that because the residence is using it for parking. In such a scenario, they could find themselves without adequate on-site parking, in which case then they would have to find street parking to meet their needs, or they would have to convert their landscaping and figure out a way to squeeze parking on site, which likely might be their desire in the event that they were to lose the space that's currently available for their personal use. But as I said, I think that scenario is highly unlikely, and I don't think that the project as proposed will have any adverse impact on public use of the right of way.
I think that, I don't have any, how many of you seen pictures of, the issue with Cypress Point, if traffic is going to be on Stetson or those streets where the fire truck's going, where all of East Moss Beach needs to funnel down into California, those streets have this problem as well. And it's not that this wide right of way in those streets has been landscaped, fences, and then maybe a curb cut out for, I mean, the roadway's too narrow for those streets. And particularly on the west of the highway where in California Street and going to the Marine Reserve, where it is heavy coastal access traffic. And it's the same situation where it's paved, there's curbs and gutters, but what looks like a really narrow right of way is really, it goes way back into the residents' yards. And this is just how I say this is the curse of our 100-year-old subdivisions, where they just stamp these parcels on a map with no contour lines and whatever. So I mean, if it were a street like that where you have through traffic going, I can see much more of a concern, but not this neighborhood. Not Butte Mare or the other, it's like,
And just in response to the concern about setting a precedent, because I think, we don't want this action to in any way imply that if we were dealing with a similar situation in the area where we do have significant coastal access and recreation demand, that we couldn't take a different approach. I think our decisions for exceptions like these are very case specific, and they're based on the facts of the particular lot and the area. So I wouldn't want the commissioners to be concerned that taking this action would preclude our ability to require on-site parking in other instances where we felt like that was necessary to protect a public resource.
Thanks. And I understand that. I mean, I know that, it's a case by case basis. When I read the report, I didn't realize that this thing, the one parking space was out in the public right away. And I'm glad that, that they have all this space that they can use for parking that is in the public right away to their advantage. It's fine. The problem I have is with that one requirement for one parking space within their own lot line in a lot that is big enough to accommodate parking space, because we've had other situations with the lot was already way too small and there was no other space to incorporate a parking space, and so we would let it go because there was no physically way to do it. But this lot is big enough, but it would inconvenience the look of the landscaping, but the space is there. That's my take. But anyway, I'm just saying, I differ, but we can move forward to see where it goes.
I appreciate your difference, and, this legislation to make things denser has consequences. It is traffic, it is parking, it is sewers, it's water, it's everything. And, we have to be mindful of your concerns, because the quality of life is why we buy into neighborhoods. We looked at this neighborhood and said, this is where I would like to live. And it's based on a lot of things. And it's based on, the greenery, or it's based on the access to amenities, or how I can get to things. And when we monkey around with that, we monkey around with why I want to stay in that neighborhood. And my reasoning, is while I don't like the legislation that is forcing us to do things that affect our quality of life, I can easily give my variance vote, is because it doesn't impact the quality of life. And that's where I am. But you raised an extremely important things that everybody needs to be aware of, that it's going to really bite us down the road.
any further discussion? Are we ready for a motion?
If there's no more discussion, I'll make a motion that the planning commission approve the design review permit, the non-conforming use permit, the coastal development exemption for PLN 2023-51, based on and subject to the required findings and conditions of approval listed in attachment A.
I'll second it.
Thank you. That was a motion by Commissioner Hanson and a second by Chair Ketchum. Commissioner Commissioner Gupta.
Yes.
Commissioner Hanson,
Aye.
Commissioner Serrano Kwan,
Aye.
Commissioner Ramirez,
No.
Chair Ketchum.
Yes,
Thank you, Chair. Motion carries 4-1.
thank you. We will now close item 2 and move on to items 3 through 5 from the director.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Sam. I do not have any correspondence to report, so I'll move on to item 4 regarding the next meeting. We're not proposing any study session, but we do have 3 items on the agenda. One being a major modification and coastal development permit amendment for a design change to a previously approved new home and ADU on Magellan Avenue in Miramar on the
Again?
coast. Apparently so. We have proposed amendments to our accessory dwelling unit regulations only outside the coast side. And then we have, we will be bringing forward our revised housing element for the Planning Commission's action. And unless there's questions about the next meeting, I'll move on to the director's report. I wanted to update you on the actions taken by the Board of Supervisors yesterday. There was a 3-lot subdivision that required a general plan amendment. It's located on Upland Avenue in Emerald Lake Hills. It was forwarded to the board with a recommendation of approval from the Planning Commission, and the board supported that recommendation and approved the subdivision. Also on the agenda was the Cypress Point Affordable Housing Project, which was unanimously approved by the Board of Supervisors. I would note that some of the comments made by some of the supervisors during that hearing had to do with the importance of the county proceeding with the related infrastructure improvements at the various intersections and within the neighborhood to address existing traffic needs and the added impact of the project. And then finally, staff provide an update to the Board of Supervisors on the status of our housing element. And as I reported to the board yesterday, we've shortened the time frame for submittal to the state. Recently, I received correspondence from state HCD asking for an update on the time frame. And as I think I reported to you previously, I let the state know that we were looking at probably a June timeframe to submit. They responded with a request that we try and shorten that time frame. So I worked with Bharat and Will to see what we could do to expedite things. And thanks to them and their willingness to work some overtime, we were able to complete the revisions and post that on our website on Monday. We've shortened the public review period on the revised update from what we had planned was 30 days to the little bit more than the minimum required by state law. The minimum is 7 days. But in all honesty, we will always accept comments up to and including the final hearing on the item, which will be on April 24th. So just like we had a quick turnaround on Cypress Point permits where you acted and then we had it on the next available board meeting 13 days later, we'll be doing the same with the housing element. So it'll come to you on April 10th, and then it'll go to the Board of Supervisors on April 23rd. And so between when it was published on our website and on Monday to April 23rd, the public and any interested parties will be welcome to comment on it. We have been in communication with various stakeholders and organizations to make sure that they're aware of where we're at. And we've encouraged HCD staff and other interested parties to reach out and contact us if they have comments or concerns, so that we can do our best to address them before we ask you to take action on April 10th and before we ask the board to take action on the 23rd. The action we'll be requesting is that you recommend the board approve the submittal of the revised draft to HCD. Once we do that, HCD will have their review period to let us know if they've got any final changes that they believe need to be made on the housing element. They'll then come back to the board for final adoption, assuming there's no significant changes that are required to address HCD's review. That's what happened the first time around, and that's why it's coming back to you on the 10th. Our hope is, because we've been very diligent about ensuring we address HCD's comments, and because we've coordinated with them on the way in which we've revised it, that their response will not require any substantive changes, and therefore we can go straight to the board. Once the board adopts the housing element, after it's been determined to be adequate by the state, then will be considered in substantial compliance with state rules regarding housing element adoption. However, full compliance will not be achieved until we actually complete the zoning amendments that are proposed in the housing element. As you may recall, in order to meet our regional allocation, we're going to have to do rezoning in various areas of the county, and we'll need to complete those rezonings in order to obtain full compliance. And it's our intent to initiate those rezonings immediately so that we can get to full compliance as soon as possible. There was some questions about the consequences of not being in compliance. And, the two primary consequences that were discussed were what's called the builder's remedy. And while we're out of compliance, developers can propose developments that are not in compliant, housing projects, that is, that don't comply with our general plan and zoning. We don't see that to be something that's likely to occur because, as the commissioners are aware, in most instances, the ability to develop sites at certain levels of intensity are highly constrained in the unincorporated area by the availability of infrastructure and other relevant requirements that, as I said, make it unlikely that someone would propose to build more than what's allowed by our general plan and zoning. And today, in the year and 3 months that we have been out of compliance, there have been no proposals, builder remedy proposals in the county. The second consequence is eligibility for state grants. And once we obtain substantial compliance, we will continue to be eligible for state grants. But while we're out of compliance, we are at risk of not being able to obtain state grants. So we are working with utmost haste to get to substantial compliance and then to full compliance. And that will require a lot of work on behalf of staff, and it will also involve future actions by this commission. And that concludes my report today. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
About the housing element. So trying to sort this out. I thought that the next step was to sort of bundle together and run it by the coastal HCD first. Is that not going to happen? Is what you have going now, and you get posted by this coming Monday. And we will,
This past Monday. And
so it's posted.
it is posted. And with regard to coordination with HCD, because they were pushing us to release it as soon as possible, we made a request to HCD. Well, does that mean that you can meet with us immediately and make sure that what we're posting, what we're releasing is at least at first glance sufficient? And so we did have a meeting with HCD staff last week. And while they didn't raise any red flags with our revisions, they were also not in a position to say that they're fully satisfactory. And given that circumstance, we emphasize the importance to them of staying in touch with us as they review this. Don't wait till when we submit to say, hey, there's an issue that needs to be addressed, because we're hoping that between now and your action and the subsequent board's action, that if HCD staff does identify any sufficiencies, they'll let us know so we can supplement the revised plan as necessary to ensure that it will be successfully certified once it is submitted.
Okay. Questions from anybody else? Then we are adjourned. Thank you.
I have a bit of trivia
Oh, well, please.
if you're up for it. So we use yes,